On April 15, 2007, Tim Ferriss released the book 4-Hour Workweek. The book became a soaring success and sold over 2.1 million copies and was translated into over 40 languages. The book's promises was attractive to anyone: less work, less stress, more money. And while the book produced helpful strategies and vision for being more efficient with your time and creating an income outside of your corporate job, the title of the book gets at something that all of us men believe: the less work, the less stress, the better. Which, I mean, I'm on board with for the most part. However, this ideology can go to the extent of idolizing a life and work without any stress or pressure. In this video, I'm going to share with you the purpose of pressure and responsibility in your life, the lie that we've been told by culture, and why running from pressure and responsibility might be your greatest mistake. Think of the pressure that we experience like steel that's being worked down by a blacksmith. It's heated and hit. It becomes stronger. The pressure transforms it. In James chapter 1, verse 2-4, it says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." When we endure pressure, we're changed, we're molded, and we're better equipped to stand steadfastly in the face of more heat and more pressure. Now, a while back, a church asked me to speak at their conference, their little thing that they're putting on, and immediately I was anxious. I was super nervous about it. My wife, who runs my emails, Kezia, she told me about it, and I was super like, okay, wait, I was making all these excuses. Maybe my schedule doesn't align. Oh, wait a minute. This doesn't feel like it would really be on my topic. I don't really have anything to say about this. And I just tried to throw every single excuse at her. So then she would look at me and say, "Oh, you know what? That makes sense. Yeah, you should just say you don't want to do it." I wanted to avoid the pressure because I was scared of failure. Now, the truth is, whether we have success or have failure, God is forming us through that. But if we never show up, if we're never under that pressure, then there is no possibility for God to use that in our life. Now, for me, it took my wife's encouragement to look me straight in the eye and say, "Isaac, why don't you want to do this? None of your excuses make sense. They're dumb. You should just do this." And for me to be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm not doing this because I'm scared. I'm scared and I don't want to fail. And that takes a humbling, because the reality is when we encounter stress and pressure, we may crumble underneath. We may fail, but God uses even that to grow us stronger. But if you avoid that pressure, like continually, always obfuscating any responsibility or any pressure that might be coming up, then you'll always be terrified because I'm not prepared. I want you to think pressure like an X-ray machine. It reveals hidden fractures in our character. It shows us where we need God's healing and forgiveness. 2 Corinthians 12, 9-10 says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest on me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong." I mean, this sucks, right? Because you don't want to be exposed. Your weaknesses, you don't want to be exposed for where you're lacking. And how do we prevent that from happening? Well, I don't want to be in a situation where I might not know how to do something, or I don't want to be in an environment where I might not be able to answer a question. I am just going to avoid all that. I'm not going to take that risk that I might be exposed. God's power is seen more clearly even in our weaknesses, as Paul said. So by us only taking on things, only taking on that little bit of pressure, or however much pressure we know we can definitely handle, so then we can be capable, we're not really showing off God's power in that. We're showing our own capability. But when we take that step of faith into something that, okay, this is going to be a lot, right? Whatever that is, not just with your career, but with your family. Getting married, that's a lot of pressure. Or having children. Man, especially as the man, you're a provider, protector, leader, spiritual leader. God wants to show himself even through your weaknesses, through your failure. But those things will never be exposed if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't embrace that pressure, if you don't take those responsibilities. But when we avoid pressure, we have this false sense of self-sufficiency, missing God's transforming power. Okay, so I've never been a construction guy. I've been more of being on my computer, taking on little projects around the home type of guy. But I've come to understand something over the years with some projects is that pressure treated wood is important. And the reason being is that when you're putting up a frame for a house, if your wood isn't treated, what happens? Well, mold, bugs, and rot. Over time, it can rot and decay. Okay, let me bring this around. God is building a house. You're part of that house. You're part of what he is building. He is pressure treating you because when he builds this house, right, he wants it to stand firm, and it will stand firm because he is the foundation. But he's creating this environment beforehand that when you enter this frame, right, the frame of his kingdom, those other things, those temptations, those trials, those other pressures of the rest of the house weighing on you, those won't be nearly as powerful as if you weren't previously pressure treated. So for you guys, maybe you're a single young guy right now, which is a good portion of my audience. You're like, okay, I really don't want to engage in anything that puts me out of my comfort zone. I just don't really want to. And so you're playing it safe right now. God wants you to embrace pressure because he wants to pressure treat you for your future family, for your future marriage, for your future responsibilities in church or your community, so that you can bear that weight and you can be prepared for God's purposes for you, that you would withstand the pressure with God's help and you'd bring him glory. Now, we live more in the center of our city, and all the time we see men that are, either homeless or on drugs or things like that are just kind of wandering around aimlessly. They have nothing to do. They have no work to go to because, obviously they have big struggles going on. But when we reject the responsibility that God has put on our life, we end up being one of these men, kind of wandering aimlessly in the city with nothing to do, nowhere to go. And you could consider this, wow, that's the dream. That's the carefree life. But with this lack of purpose, our lives, we drift into despair or even temptation. My friend Alex Wilson made this connection that in the Bible, before it talks about Adam's sin with Bathsheba, it points out something specifically and really important, actually. In 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1, it says, "In the spring of the year, the time where kings go out to battle, David sent Joab, his servant, with him and all Israel, and they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem." The Bible literally says that it was the time the kings were supposed to go to war, and yet David stayed behind. He wasn't busy. He didn't have a purpose. He had nothing to do. He was just hanging around, and then he saw a woman bathing, and he lingered. Listen, guys, we were made for pressure. We were made to go to war. But too often we allow fear or laziness to keep us from taking a risk, from jumping out into taking responsibility. A carefree life is not all that is cracked up to be. There's no purpose. There's no meaning. There's no risk. There's no stakes involved. Pressure is God's gateway to purpose. I want to take you back like 7 years ago. I was 19 years old and I had no pressure. I was living in my parents' basement. I paid minimal rent to them. I had a part-time job. I was making videos. But I really didn't have that much pressure on me. Nobody was asking me to guest on their podcast. My audience was very small. Nobody would know if I didn't even post that week. I had no wife or family to provide for. That was sweet for a little bit. It felt freeing. But over time, all I wanted was a little bit of pressure, a little bit of opportunity, some purpose, some stakes involved. I think of a singer on Instagram who wants to gain an audience. If you were to take that person and say, okay, hey, I'm going to give you literally 1 million fans. There are going to be 1 million fans after you, and your record's going to blow up, and you're going to get to tour and do all these things. Do you want that? That person would probably say, yeah, that's a dream come true. But then you're in the middle of that and you're realizing, wow, you're enduring the pressure of a tour coming up. You're working on that. You're working on a new album, making sure it was as good as your last one. You're trying to keep up a public image of some way, and you're stressed about what people think about you. This pressure is brought about by success and purpose, right? But some people, before they even reach this kind of purpose, they'll self-sabotage themselves because they don't want to experience more pressure. We can allow fear or laziness or pride to prevent us from just diving headfirst into this pressure, this responsibility. But if we ask God, God, give me the strength, give me the humility to step into this pressure because I want to be used by you, God. Man, that's a powerful place to be. I think you're going to end up in opportunities that you never really thought possible. And that's what I've experienced because, man, I'm letting go of my pride. You would say no if it were just about your pride. You don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to do something wrong. But if you can surrender that to God and you can embrace Him and what He's calling you to, then you can embrace pressure and allow that to mold you, and He's going to use that in your life in a really powerful way, I believe. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe because I'm putting out new videos all the time. And until next time, keep pursuing the mission.